WLTC, Looney Tunes Critic Radio. All right, everybody. Hi, welcome to what I'm jokingly gonna. I don't know what these are gonna be. If we're gonna do, if this is a one-off, if there's gonna be more. But I'm deciding. I came up with a good title a long time ago for something, and they say if you have a good title, you know, you can pretty much do anything with it. For instance, there was once a really great titled podcast by the comedian Paul F. Tompkins with a great title, but the actual podcast is no longer with us because it's kind of boring. It's puppets having debates. It's really boring, but the title was great. It's called No, You Shut Up. I love that title. I think they could have done so much more with it. So I love the title for, we all remember Cartoon Network and the Acme Hour. It was like an all, they didn't just do Looney Tunes cartoons. It was Tom and Jerry, Tex, all that stuff. But the Acme name, we think of that as being like more of a traditional, we can associate that with crazy, screwball, funny, traditional animation. And also, we love a good belly aching, don't we? We love to bellyache about stuff that other people don't think matters. So for this, I'm calling this the Acme Acres. And my first guest, you heard him there, a very notorious bellyacher and a staple in the animation world, in the animation historian world. Also a published author. So you have your opinions, you motherfuckers, but this guy actually wrote them down in a book. He means that shit. No, it's a really good book. It's I guess it's the official history now, right? Of Ren and Stimpy, Sick Little Monkeys.
I don't think anyone's gonna want to do it now. So.
They did fuck that. They did fuck the Ren and Stimpy history up pretty good in that documentary. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome my good guest, good friend and good guest, Thad Komorowski.
Howdy, Trevor.
How you doing, man? So we need to talk about this latest upset in traditional animation, that of Tom and Jerry 2021. And I understand also the only reason you watched it is because I made you do this thing.
I was thinking about watching it fresh with you, but that would be an abominable length.
I pointed that out to you. Yeah, I was like,
you pointed that out, and I don't think I would have finished because I stopped and started.
It would have been a 5-hour episode because we would have just paused every 5-10 minutes and been like, and what were they thinking with this? Oh my God. And then it wouldn't have been listenable. So yeah, I think I was right to do it this way. So let's just start off with before we get into it, and we will get into it. Just general, what are your general thoughts about the movie?
Well, I kind of want to point out how much this has been in everyone's face during this time of quarantine. Even so much so that my old man, who is not a Tom and Jerry fan, and let me just tell a bit of my own history briefly. When I was a kid, he told me that he didn't like Tom and Jerry, so I hid all of my Tom and Jerry stuff like it was pornography when I was a child. Because for some reason, I thought it would upset him. I really did. And he's like, it's like, what do I get? Your sister watches the Disney Channel all the time. I don't give a shit if you watch some stupid cat and mouse cartoons once in a while. But even he was upset by this movie. He watched it about 30 seconds.
Wow.
And he said, like, I'm out.
It was the rapping pigeons that did it for him.
It was the rapping pigeons, and he just said, like, these are such classic characters, and they deserve better. And it's like, wow, you told me growing up you didn't like Tom and Jerry. What a turnaround! Well,
you know what? It's not for him, but he understands and respects. It appears that he understands and respects the legacy, even if it's not for him. Which, for the record, is kind of my relationship with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a Star Wars guy. I love Empire. I think that's a great movie on its own. I just don't think it's as expansive as everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, that's so cool. So going into this, there's a real history with you and Tom and Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that in mind, what did you think of the movie?
I mean, what were you expecting from the ads? I mean,
yeah. Well, that I have to say that was seeing those trailers, and those trailers were, you know, I'm sure it's worse for people like you and me and Anthony and Austin and Matt Hunter and Jerry Beck. I'm sure like all of our YouTubes, I'm sure there's way more plays of that Tom and Jerry stuff than on, but it felt like it was fucking everywhere. You know, I felt like if I was, you know, in downtown Atlanta and I saw a bus ad, like it just changed for me. You know, it's like, oh, he's over there. You know, but it is everywhere. And I'll tell you the first thing I thought, which I'm happy to say was not as true as it ended up being when I saw the first trailer, was the people. The live action actors are on par with the cartoon characters in terms of the overwrought cartoonish acting, which to me means you're not going anywhere with that, because part of even Space Jam with all its flaws, there's a difference between Michael Jordan and Bill Murray and all those. You know, there's some subtle difference between them and the Looney Tunes. There's a huge difference in the way that the actors in Roger Rabbit perform. They are doing a heightened performance because they're doing a noir kind of a thing.
Oh, Bob Hoskins, brilliant. I mean, he's worth watching. If I watch that film, it's just for him.
Yeah. That's the other thing that's weird about that movie is I realized when we were doing the commentary for the animators commentary, I realized after all these years, my favorite scenes in the movie are Bob Hoskins scenes, and there's no animation in one of them,
right?
At all. But yeah, so you watch that trailer and you're like, it. Now, granted, it's a trailer, so everything has to be overwrought, but there's so much, mugging in both the live actors and the characters, and there's no separation in that way. It's like it's a cartoon world, except that some people are cartoons and other people are real.
Mm-hmm.
What about that?
I mean, I was glad it was in New York City, because that place, I lived there for about 5 years, and they got the plasticity of modern New York City down pretty right. So it's an artificial environment for artificial characters.
So you tried to watch it with your dad, and then he left after 30 seconds?
No, he left. No, he watched it on his own. That's how much this is such a ear and brain worm, is that a guy in his 60s who doesn't like Tom and Jerry tried watching it.
Now, do you think he would have tried watching it if you were not his son?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, like I said, his jam is Bugs and Popeye and Milton the Monster. I mean, he just doesn't have time for Tom and Jerry or really any other old cartoons.
I like your dad.
But no, he's always been respectful to me and everything, though. I've had a very healthy relationship with my parents, and them having a cartoon nerd as a child. But this is just, I think it goes back to what Mark Hausler said about these characters, is that Joe Barbera put an Italian curse on them, so nobody could ever get the characters right, including Joe himself, ever again after the first run. And I think, that curse holds true no matter how hard they try.
Well, I mean, let's break down what the actual story is, if you want to call it that, and then we can really pick apart.
Ugly Animals Help White People.
It's called Ugly Animals Help White People, the movie. Yeah, basically it's Chloe Grace Moretz. And also I'll tell you this, my opinion about her is that the one thing that's consistent with her performance in this movie is consistent with every movie that she's ever done. Whether it's a great movie, a complete shit movie, or just meh, she's the best thing about it.
Yeah.
I gotta just, again, I can't imagine how hard it was to be in this movie. Or at
The
least
late Joe would have agreed with you.
yeah, you could to carry this goddamn movie, and she does as good a job as anyone could have done. So, and she's likable too. I remember that scene in the very beginning where she gets the job from the lady with that had the good resume, and she steals her resume and all that stuff. The reason that fell out of place to me is because that's a very Bugs Bunny thing to do. And I was like, if they were doing a fucking like a Space Jam movie or something, that would be interesting. Because I've always loved the idea. Like my character, we're gonna see her in some other stuff coming down the road. This fairy named Twinklebelly. I've always loved the idea, was what she is, of a Bugs Bunny heckler character that's a female. And we never got that in those old days. And for like 5 minutes, I got a glimpse of that, what that might be like in this movie. As easy and dumb and lame as the actual way she went about tricking this lady was, Chloe managed to get to the root of what they were trying to do and bring some of that out. But again, it's completely inappropriate because it's a Tom and Jerry movie.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say because I mean I agree with you. She's a very gifted actress, but it's like, I mean it's the fucking Tom and Jerry movie. What is she gonna do in it? I mean that's the thing is that
De Niro couldn't help the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie. So yeah.
Well, and they had Keith Scott on that too, so there was nothing that, and he knows Jay Ward better than anyone. So
if we're gonna get into the weeds of this stuff, which indeed it's the Acme Acres, we should. It needs to be said for the record. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to say it, but any project taking place, any Tom and Jerry project taking place post 1950, whatever, that doesn't have Spike and Tony involved is going to be less good than it could be.
I agree. Yeah.
It's a mistake to not involve Spike with this one.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, he's working on Space Jam, so I guess, he really couldn't.
Right.
But yeah, no one, I mean, he really did, again, to praise people that are doing as admirable a job as anyone could do with these thankless tasks. He did such a great job, as good a job as anyone could do with those straight to video weird Tom and Jerry movies, like Tom and Jerry Meet the Wizard of Oz and all that. Mm-hmm. Again, as good a job as can be done. The characters move like they do. It's just weird. Like when someone tells you that they're gonna do Tom and Jerry in the Wizard of Oz, right? You immediately picture it as good as it could have ever been, right? In your head. You're like, okay, because you know, I mean, the way that they're supposed to move under the direction of William Hanna and Joseph Barbera at MGM in the 40s, you picture that on the 39 MGM set with Judy Garland, you know what I mean? And you picture it, boy, every bit as good as when Jerry is dancing with Gene Kelly, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You picture it as good as it can be, and then you see it, and it's as good as it could be, but it's fucking weird. It's so fucking weird in your mind's eye, even with everything right, that illusion of how fucking weird and off-putting it is actually still present because Spike does such a good job of making it right, So in other words, you can't get tripped up in the well, it doesn't look like Jerry, it doesn't look like MGM, they don't have the real music from the original. No, they have everything. It looks like that. So you're like, wow, this is fucking weird. You're just left with how weird it is.
Right.
So there's merit to that. There's no merit to this movie.
No.
Now, you mentioned to me on Facebook that you made some comparisons to the movie they did before this, which I've never seen. I've only seen people reviewing it.
Which one? The 1993 movie? The fully animated Tom and Jerry the movie?
Is that okay? Well, yeah, no, I guess there's more that I haven't seen because
there's a lot of movies. Jesus Christ. They've done so many. I lost track of them. I lost track of them around the time my friend Earl Kress died in 2011 or so, because he did one that he was really proud of.
Rest in peace.
Sherlock Holmes, which probably was the best one. And he did a Robin Hood one too, but that got released after he died. And I wouldn't know which one to compare it to. I mean, in the 1993 one where Richard Kind voices Tom, that one has them teaming up with some orphan girl too. But obviously, this one in this new 2021 movie isn't quite the same. But
Chloe Grace Moretz may as well have been an orphan in this movie.
Right. Now that I've seen it, I would say that, yeah, just might as well have been. But there's, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it just seems like with the brain trusts of all these companies is like they see these pieces of shit as the standard, and we can't go any higher than this because like it's all paint by numbers, the same type of shit. With like the Rocky and Bullwinkle was like that, the Yogi Bear was like that, the Woody Woodpecker was like that, and you know Space Jam and Back in Action were kind of like that too, but much higher production values. But
I think my big I said there that I didn't realize there were two movies, because to me, and I don't have the love for Tom and Jerry that everyone else does. I do like those cartoons. I do have 4 or 5 sets on my wall over there, but I think, honest to God, I think one of them isn't even open. And it's just like, I appreciate it for what it is more than actually watching it, and it's that thing. It's kind of that thing I was saying on Anthony's podcast that we did, where it's like, yeah, I respect it. It's brilliant, but do I have to watch it? And so to me, I feel like it only works. Part of what I think is so great and about them in this way is that I only, to me, they're like faulty towers. There only need to be so many of them, because what it works about it is in this tiny little universe, this little microcosm of things. And it's like, they did as much expansion on that universe as you could when they did things like Tom and Jerry in space, or when they were in France, fighting each other with swords.
Right.
I think they really lucked out in terms of stretching the premises of what they could get away with Tom and Jerry with those races. But they do work, those race straight to video things. But ultimately, whenever I hear the words Tom and Jerry movie, I'm out. I'm out, man. It's to me, it's anywhere from 55 minutes to 2 hours too long.
Oh, sure. They can't. They're not. They're really not personalities. I mean, are they really more than the cat and the mouse in some respects? I mean, I could expand a little more on that.
Please do, because I have a whole thing I want to get into that Pez and I have been, semi-arguing about for the last week since this movie came out. About
what's Pez's position? I'm just curious.
Pez. Okay, I'll say this. I would say that if there was any arguing at all, it was because we were texting. I was messaging him while he was in a meeting. but I had my points that I wanted to make, motherfucker, and he would occasionally weigh in and then say something and then leave how dare you? But I mean, we all know Pez is brilliant and can break shit down and understands the nitty-gritty of stuff. But first of all, I was getting messages while he was watching it. Like, God damn, this is fucking, oh my God. But then it's like, and they did that really good, that one little thing. They could have expanded on that but when it was all over, it was like the reason why the movie was bad is because of this. And the reason why the movie was bad is because of that. And it was all little things like the puppet rigging and this. And then I'm like, no, you said it just now. And this is what I said to him. You can't make a fucking movie with them. They're marquee characters. They're Abbott and Costello. They're the Looney Tunes. They're in some ways Laurel and Hardy. They're the Three Stooges. They exist in this one-dimensional little world where they do shorts where they can't change. The best example of marquee characters in features not working would be, we all know Jason versus Freddy, right?
Right.
Rather, Freddy versus Jason. Well, that came about, and if you look at the very end scene, nobody wins. The last shot in that movie, you see Jason, drowns himself again while holding on to Freddy and pulling his head off and all this other shit. And then in the last shot, you see Jason coming out of Crystal Lake, and you're like, oh, Jason really won. And then you see he's got Freddy's head, and he's like, yeah, he fucking really won. He's got Freddy's head. And then it zooms in on Freddy's face, and he fucking winks at the camera, and nobody's dead. And that all started with New Line Cinema coming to Renaissance Pictures, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Rob Tabbert, and saying, hey, we want to do Ash versus Freddy versus Jason. And they said, fuck yeah, because then Ash can fucking finally kill Jason and Freddy. And they were like, what? No, you can't kill them. We got more movies to make. And it's the same with the Stooges, and it's the same with the cartoons. A movie has to have a central character, or as Mr. Plinkett says, a protagonist. A protagonist, a character that goes through a journey, that has stakes. Again, that's my big beef about Space Jam, is that there are no true stakes. Daffy even says it, and Bugs pulls his neck, and he's like, Looney Tunes, man. It's like, we can literally not die. We'll be fine, Mike. Do whatever the fuck you want. And because there's no stakes for those side characters, and the Abbott and Costello, the Three Stooges, and all that, they can't change. They have to be what we know them every fucking time. The Stooges can't suddenly land that job that makes them, like in every one of their shorts, every get rich quick scheme, do they end up rich at the end? No, but if they do, the one right after, they're not still rich. You know what I mean? They're marquee characters. So when you do these big movies, the Three Stooges big movies, are they the main characters? No. They have some dude, some Chloe Grace Moretz, and some love interest, some, what's his fucking name from SNL, Colin Jost. And they put them together, and they have all the stakes. And not having stakes, it's not as bad as not having a protagonist in your movie, because you can definitely have a narrative and stakes and things that move the plot forward, a narrative, without having a protagonist necessarily. But here's a good example. A good example of a movie, an animated movie with that is starring marquee characters. Wherein, there's no protagonist, but because I think this is a great example of it being done deliberately, meaning it's not like, oh, we have this situation and we've got these characters, we got to make a movie, and they try to squeeze them in and it doesn't work. But I think Beavis and Butthead Do America is a fantastic example of the filmmakers being aware of the problems of their characters, the fact that they can't change, they can't get older, can't even really have stakes, or things we give a fuck about. But it's the thing where, at any point in that movie, Beavis and Butthead are who they always are. They just want to sit and watch TV. They're in search of their television. It's just now they're in Vegas or this or that or other thing. All the other characters in the movie are pretty much self-contained to that movie. You don't see them in any other Beavis and Butthead episodes or anything like that, but they are there strictly to move the plot forward, because Beavis and Butthead would not move the plot forward on their own. They couldn't, they wouldn't. And Mike Judge is such a fucking genius that it would not surprise me in the least to find out that he did all of that on purpose. Anyway, we've got a movie with characters in Tom and Jerry that, again, don't have their marquee characters, Tom and Jerry. They can't change all that other stuff. but it's a horrible movie because of that, because Hollywood now can't make a movie without those things, but they have to, but they don't know how to do it, effectively, like obviously in the case of Tom and Jerry. It is formulaic, but you can still have a formula and be satirical with that formula and effective with that formula. And Beavis and Butthead Do America does this ingeniously. But it's one example, where it's done right, and a myriad examples of ways where it's done wrong. So anyway, that's my thing. And I think Pez got mad because every little thing that he said, I knocked down. I was like, no, dude, they're not, you could, and I remember saying to him, dude, even if everything you said, if they did it like Who Framed Roger Rabbit level times 10, and the timing was right, and the gags were right, and the the slapstick was right, and was perfect, it would still be a C-. Because it can't be a Tom and Jerry movie because there's no such thing. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm trying to marshal them, and I would have to agree. We did an episode of Cartoon Logic, our podcast, and my co-host Bob Jakes, he pointed out that what's made these guys endure Tom and Jerry is they've got a cool sibling rivalry going on there. They're not exactly the typical prey predator like Sylvester and Tweety. Where Sylvester ultimately does want to murder Tweety. Tom really couldn't give a shit. He'll like slap him around. There's occasional ones where Jerry is the prey, and they could expand on that a little bit. But I also think being beholden to having these characters silent really does a number. Yeah. I mean, you could do it. I think you could do it tastefully, but which obviously the 1993 movie didn't do. I mean, because you've got Richard Kind voicing Tom, and he's not talking about Hollywood pedophiles or his balls.
Let me ask you this though. Let me ask you about this, because is that the one where they start off silent and then they start talking? Okay.
Yes.
See, now the one tiniest little increment of kudos I can give them is that at least they realized all the stuff that I was talking about when they were like, okay, if we're going to do a Tom and Jerry movie, they have to have stakes, they have to move, they have to become characters. So we are incompetent writers, so we have to make them talk.
Right.
Is that what happened, you think?
Probably. I mean, it's hard to say, where any of these shit sandwiches start and begin, and who exactly is to blame. Because that movie had Joe Barbera's full endorsement and backing.
Really?
He was pretty gung ho about it. I mean, one of the reasons they never did shorts for a long time, like they never. I think it was only right at the end they did that thing called the Karate Guard.
Yeah, I know about
Spike
it.
and Tony did that.
Yeah,
I think Joe might have written the story, but for years.
Joe
Barbera was trying to get a Tom and Jerry short going, and he insisted that there be a little E.T. type alien in it, because kids love that little green shit, So it would be like that was a real mindset into where the actual Tom and Jerry series went. That's why Tuffy's always there, and the Duckling is always there, and there's Tyke is always there. He thinks that equals. We're really getting creative here. We're expanding the universe and the lexicon by adding this fluffy little fucker to it. Now let me grab this waitress's ass.
So that. Yeah, he was the John Kay of his day.
No. Well, Joe is actually romantic about it. John really isn't.
Let me think. So the. What? How do you know anything about how this movie got made? Because
no, I have no idea. Other than someone wanted money. I mean, how anything gets made, I know. But
our movie, like you mentioned, the Woody Woodpecker one. Are these movies making money? These reboots. I couldn't say
honestly. I mean, this Tom and Jerry will make money, but with Woody Woodpecker, that character is obscenely popular in South America. I mean, this is what it was. That's what that movie was made for, was the South American market, and they just dumped it on the U.S. Just as an afterthought.
So it's I heard that. I think Nostalgia Critic mentioned that in his review.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely but that wouldn't surely be the case here with all the advertising that they did for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how did they maybe think they would make more money maybe with something like that if they put it out right before Space Jam, like it would create a wave into space. No, Space Jam's not coming out until the summer.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there's just this demand for content, and it doesn't matter if it's good, just as long as it gets people subscribing, even just for that single month.
Yeah. You know what? We're at the halfway mark here, roughly. We've been talking for about a half hour. So let's, we're all here because of animation. Let's talk about the animation in this cartoon of a movie.
Well, you had the best assessment, unwiped ass. So
I did. Did I? Is that what I called it?
You said it was unwiped ass, and it stuck with me. And so that's really what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
not.
I mentioned in the chat that the worst character was Butch, Tom's black cat rival.
Yeah.
Which looks like they only made a single rig for him.
Yeah.
For every shot he's in. Because it's always a downturn, like he's looking up.
Yeah,
but he's not even looking up. he's looking up.
It's basically for the those that don't really know what we're talking about. It's the equivalent of if you took a popsicle stick and you made his head facing downward to look down at people, like he's looking down at Tom in that opening scene. And then you suddenly had to have a scene where he's looking up. You had to angle the entire popsicle stick toward the sky. So his body is now and so now we only have to have him in close-ups if he's going to look up. It's so confining. And the one, I remember, I don't remember who said this. But one of the old timers said this. It's amazing. Maybe it was Richard Williams, but it's amazing. The amount of technical shortcuts people will make to avoid just doing it the right way, which is weird because if you really just did it the right way, it would be fewer steps. But now there's an industry around all of these extra steps. And my biggest beef is that there are people in animation getting creative jobs that themselves do not know how to animate.
Oh, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
It's been a big problem in the industry because, so much, you can't necessarily blame these people because so much of the actual animation has been taken away from this country for so long.
Yeah, they hired animators to be character designers on Looney Tunes cartoons, which was smart. But they don't let those people actually animate. Heavens no. Jim Soper, I can barely see any of his. I see his designs, but I can barely see any of what what attracted me if you look on his Instagram, all those great little animations he did and those drawings.
Mm-hmm.
There's none of that life in the movement, and it's weird that they were. I think you said this. It's weird that they were trying in most cases to go for a Clampett aesthetic because the one or two times they went into 50s Jones, 50s Jones is where they actually got it right.
And when they went into 50s Freeling with the Rocky and Muggsy one, which I thought was the best of this batch, clearly. I think it's just because at those points of their careers, they would be more adaptable to today's environment than 40s of any of those guys would be. But I don't know. It's a matter of taste.
Is it?
Sometimes the lack of thereof. I
feel like
look with I'll give those shorts this over that. Those the Looney Tunes cartoons, clearly a lot of hard work went into those.
Oh yeah.
This Tom and Jerry feature, I see no hard work whatsoever.
It's very slapdash.
Yeah.
Very slapdash. In fact, I would say that your dad got out while the getting was good, because I think the most, with the exception of a few tiny little bridging sequences, quote unquote, the only thing that really felt hand drawn were those fucking pigeons. So yeah, your dad was like that. I'm out, and this is it. It's as good as it's gonna get. It got
really obvious. There's a couple when they're fighting in the park with the piano. There's a couple of like they lifted stuff from like Cat Concerto and Mouse Trouble and Trap Happy. And it's like, even if you traced it, you could get a better result than what you guys got here, and it's very unpleasant to watch. It was like it's kind of like taxidermy almost.
Oh my god! Yeah, wow, yeah, that is a great analogy.
Well, it was like that stupid short that they did. Disney did that everyone was creaming over, Paperman or whatever it was, where like, why wouldn't you just let these people do full drawn animation instead of doing it and then making it rendered and doing it through computer to make it look like that?
You're gonna have to fill me in on that one.
Oh, it's just some stupid, typical schmaltzy Disney short. You just look it up.
But it's like,
and you'll know where it goes. But it's like this. They tried to do a 2D aesthetic through 3D. So yeah, it's really a pointless exercise.
I mean, it's not a pointless exercise to try these things out, but the thing that
experiment, but this isn't an experiment. This is just crass.
I think I said this again. I may have said this to you at some other point, or maybe I said it on Anthony's podcast. But my big problem with The Incredibles, I have other problems with it, but my big problem with it was that so many people were impressed about the hair, Violet's hair. And in fact, I just watched a YouTuber who I very much like, a guy named Fact Fiend, named Carl Smallwood. He's like a fun fact kind of guy. He's like a English guy, and he had a whole video about how how hard it was to animate the hair and how it was a big deal for the hair, and it was this breakthrough in animation. It's like, yeah, it is. But I remember when, like, a year after it had come out, and it was just coming out on DVD, and I was hearing everything that this guy's talking about in my own little circle of friends, not even on the internet, just, all my little animator and cartoony and sci-fi movie nerd buddies. And they're like, oh, you don't like Incredibles? Dude, you know what happened with the hair? Oh, the hair, dude, the hair. It's like, wait. Is that why you like this movie? Because of the fucking hair? Oh no, there's other stuff. Well, tell me other stuff about it. And they couldn't. They spent 20 minutes going on about this bitch's hair. And then when I asked them to get into it, they said, oh, it's a good story. It's funny. And Jason Lee's funny in it too. It's like, that's all you got? I mean, yeah, it looks good. But the hair. All right, come on. You gotta, it's so like, the taxidermy thing, you can experiment and make your 3D, traditionally looking stuff. You should do it, but you shouldn't experiment with the films, the feature films. You should do little short films and stuff like that. I don't think it's a good idea to experiment with major films, major productions. And maybe the COVID thing has something to do with it. Maybe it could have looked a little better, but I don't know, man.
I'm kind of thinking not.
They did go all out on those shorts, though, didn't they? Buddy, what are you doing? My cat is crawling all over me.
You're dissing one of his brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Exactly.
No, those shorts were actually. I'll say it here. I thought those came out better than a lot of the Looney Tunes cartoons did. I mean, maybe because there's less personally invested for me into Tom and Jerry than with the Looney Tunes, but no, those look great. I mean, I wish they got the aesthetic that good even in a couple of scenes here. But it everything just looks awkward. Like, the Tom and Jerry designs are pretty. They can be very dynamic, but they're actually really by the books, Preston Blair type of cartooning, really. And they just they couldn't even come close to getting that with a lot of these characters. Like, the one that looked really awkward, like they didn't even try, was the girl cat Toots. Like, it didn't look like any incarnation of that character ever. I mean, like, that's actually stolen from a cartoon that Hugh Harmon did, the Alley Cat. Actually, so is the design of Butch. That's stolen from that too. If you look up that cartoon, it's a pre-Bill and Joe cartoon, but they swiped from that for the Toots and Butch. But and I didn't even get the point of why some of these characters were there. I mean,
what's weird to me, if I may say about
sure.
the aesthetic here, is that it so clearly has like a like you said, a very puppet rig heavy, very CG, but a very, and tell me if you felt this too, a very 90s vibe. In not just in the animation, but in everything. But specifically, it did look like they were trying to do that, Roger Rabbit, Space Jam, back in action kind of, live action combination thing, and just they were doing it so bad. But I what I didn't understand is, like, if you're trying to do that, like, say what you will about the Return of Mary Poppins or whatever it was called, they at least got real animators. They at least knew that if you're gonna do it, you got to do it right. And I just, because there were scenes in this movie where you can see it's fully animated, and that kind of ruins it in a weird way, because it's like, well, if I mean, and I wonder if, again, it's one of these things where, are we seeing this, or is it really there? Does everyone see it? Because it's like night and day. It's taxidermy 1 second, and then it's true animation another. And it's all under this weird cell shading, this weird digital cell shading that is trying to look like the 90s.
Yeah, I would say so, but that shading, it just has to go. I'm just so tired of it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why is that the default? Why can't it just stand on its own, like You Ought to Be in Pictures? I mean, that looked fine. I mean, and that was done. I always felt 80 like years ago.
They and there was a logic behind using it in Roger Rabbit, but I remember thinking that even in Roger Rabbit they kind of lost the understanding of that, because it's all, the thing that they show in the beginning with the cartoon, and it's like flat cell shading, and then he walks off the set, and that's when the shadows hit, and it's this illusion of, getting off, and you're in the real world, and that's great. That's fucking what you're supposed to do. But there's even scenes in Roger Rabbit where Eddie and other Toons are walking around and they have that cell shading in Toontown. It's like, no. If in Toontown should be all 2D, and the shadow, but the shading is a weird thing where it's kind of, it's only there because now it's ingrained into the zeitgeist. Where, we've seen it on so many other things that it would look weird if we didn't see it now.
Right, exactly. Just like with even, whatever the one they did with SpongeBob, where all of a sudden they're out, and they had to use it there. I forget what else is used it. Of course, Woody Woodpecker was full CG. That's right. Okay. No, it's like, and what is with the explicit shit gags? I mean, like first of all, if any Spike is going to take a shit on screen, it's going to be Tex Avery's Spike, not the Hanna-Barbera Spike. And
they would have.
Why would they think that this is appealing to anyone? It's very gross, and Plus, the Hanna-Barbera Spike, the Tom and Jerry Spike, he's they, we keep talking about how these characters are generic, but like I'm thinking to myself, no, actually, these have good angles. Like, I mean, this guy's a father and he's a bodyguard too, but like all of a sudden, like he's, crass enough to just take a shit on the ground in full view. Well, unfortunately not full view because we don't actually see it, but we sure feel it. But
well, we should say again for the record, I'm not saying that the Tom and Jerry and all these characters aren't characters.
Right.
They just can't change.
Right. And they changed pretty drastically for this film. Well,
yeah, you know what though? He did change. Spike did change. You never saw him taking a shit in the old cartoons.
Yeah, that's true. It's just
spoilers by the way.
Yeah,
Spike takes a shit in this cartoon in this movie.
Yeah, it's oh god. I think Matt posted it somewhere. Matt Hunter, he posted it somewhere, and everyone's like, "What's the big deal?" It's like, well, if you have to ask that, then you'll never know.
Yeah, right.
It's like, I mean, have Sylvester get his nuts cut off. I mean, why not? God, that's the kind of humor you expect from someone. This guy probably jerks off to 9/11 footage,
I mean, listen, I can't say that I've never at least tickled my balls while watching it in slow-mo. But, I mean, look, you just got to catch it at the right angle, man. That's another day. Yeah, New York. There was such a 90s vibe in that opening shot with the pigeons start rapping. I was like, this is so 90s. I wouldn't be surprised if you could see the towers in this New York shot. It would not surprise me at all if they put the towers in.
They should have brought back the good feathers for it.
Oh man, yeah.
Even more 90s.
That might have kept me a little longer.
I know, right?
Or you might have kept your old man. So yeah, the animation, needless to say, the animation is bad. But you know what's weird? Did you stick around for the post-credit sequence?
Not really, no.
That it's the most relaxed and normal and funny that any of the actors ever are in the movie, and that's because there's no animation in it.
I would assume that would be the case.
It's just,
I mean, they get a second to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just like, and you can tell they were like, oh, are the cameras on? Okay, we'll keep that. Mm-hmm. It's the most, it's the most human. It's the most human the human characters ever are in the movie.
Right.
Let's see. Do you think that there's going to be? Because I haven't been paying attention to the. Can you hear the cat, by the way, purring at me?
I can't.
Hang on. He is purring at me. I want you to know this because he is literally an inch from my elbow, but he's just sitting and staring at me like a creep and purring like, you should be loving me. Turn this off.
All right.
Can you hear that?
Not really. No.
All right. Yeah. Hang on. It's really happening. Here we go. Come here, buddy.
I can hear it a little bit.
Yeah, he's very intense. I'm going to name him Damien. All right. But yeah, so what was I saying? See, buddy, you fucked me up. Go away. Go away. He's like, you're talking shit about Tom. Tom's screams. People like to talk about how well they restored Tom's screams in this movie. Did they? Mm-hmm. Did they, though?
I mean, in bites and pieces, but if they wanted to be fully faithful, they would have did it for every single one.
Well,
or they would have brought back the laugh that he does, and the one who was the actor who did it? I think it was Jerry Mann who did the laugh. The laugh that Tom does and is in the classic shorts, and they sped it up for Jerry too. Oh, really? Should have found that for the tape.
Well,
have him laugh.
I believe it was Mr. Minton. Speaking of Toms.
Oh yes.
I believe it was Tom who told me that and I don't think he's seen. I think Tom has the luxury of not having to watch this movie. But he said something to me while I was talking to him about this movie and I mentioned the Tom screams. He said, "Well, they wanted to use them because he produced one of those DVDs that Spike did, and of course you want to, use as many of the original ones as you can, but." Unlike Mr. Greg Ford, who had the good fortune of finding all of those scores and those sound effects and everything stored, right. The only sources for any of those screams are the cartoons themselves, the prints themselves, which means they have other background, right. music, on them. So it might. The bad usage of them, meaning that they're hastily done and they're buried under all sorts of other stuff and they sound weird, is because they can't get them isolated.
Right.
But still, why do it then? So many of these other movies that you saw and you were talking about and other projects, they never tried to do it before because they took one. I'm sure as soon as they realized, oh, wait, we can't do that, they would have had the same realization that Tom and Spike and everybody did. It's like, oh, yeah, we really can't use these.
I think Rich Purcell told me they did end up eventually finding something that could be used. I don't know how long it took them or what point they found it, and that might be whatever they're using now. But, yeah, that's something that's really unfortunate for the MGM sound effect library. It was definitely not as well preserved as the Warner one. I mean, like, you're never going to hear that gunshot used for every sort of slam or bang again.
Here's what I got in my library for the Tom screams.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1. So look, man, if I can find them, then I'm not even a Tom fan. It's like, is it really that hard? Is it really that hard to find them? Yeah, so I think that's a good sign as to the laziness. We've discussed the laziness on the visual side with all the puppet rigging and the nastiness, and we've discussed it on the audio side with the lazy.
Well, they could never, and that's another thing with the audio is they're never going to get the Scott Bradley feel ever again. I mean, that's why they went in this urban direction with it. So.
Talk about that more, because that's something I'm completely ignorant on, and you mentioned that on when we were talking on Facebook. It never occurred to me until recently that it's not. It's a little jazz ensemble, isn't it? Those original scores.
Ballroom. Swing jazz, yeah, that's really what they are. That's really what Scott Bradley wanted to do. I mean, he really looked his nose down at cartoons. I mean, he might have quotes saying it to the contrary, but Milton Gray a million years ago, he actually interviewed Scott Bradley right before he died, actually, and he got the impression that Scott didn't really care for cartoons, and he did not care for Tex Avery at all.
Really?
With Bill and Joe, they would let Scott do whatever he wanted, and Tex would fight him on stuff, and, different choices. He said Tex had the corniest taste in soundtracks. He would want stuff like Home on the Range. Like, how dare you ask me to perform Home on the Range with the MGM Orchestra?
That's great.
and if you listen to those cartoons, you can definitely hear the difference where in the Averys they're nowhere as near as overpowering as the Tom and Jerry's,
because it's about the gag in those cartoons,
right? Mm-hmm. But it's just something that they're never going to recapture. I hate the shit on any of the. Of course, listen to me. I say I hate the shit on it, but
you kind of love it.
They can't get Carl Stalling really right, and they can't get Scott Bradley right, and it's just of a different era, and a lot of modern American musicians can't really appreciate or do it. I mean, the best tribute to Scott Bradley is that viral video of that British orchestra doing the medley of Tom and Jerry soundtracks. There's a couple that sound spookily close to the original Bradley track.
Let me look that up right now.
Yeah, if you can find it. It's really cool. They really get into it.
Do you know what it's called?
Tom and Jerry Orchestra. I don't know. That's probably what's going to turn it up. Let me see. Yeah.
Live John Wilson Orchestra 2013?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll play that right now.
But,
yeah, and it does say Scott Bradley on the thing, too.
Well, that's what it is. It's like it's got to be someone outside of America to appreciate American culture.
Yeah, of course. That does happen a lot, yeah. All right, so let's take a listen.
Yeah, because they hit all the old beats, like the "You Were Meant for Me" and "Manhattan Serenade," I think, is in at one point, and the trolley song. That's what it's funny. I don't know. They're so cheap with the music though on these productions. Paul Dini told me when he did the Giant movie, whatever it was, he wanted to use the Worry song. And they said, no, you can't use it. You got to do a facsimile. We don't want to pay for the rights to the Worry song.
Yeah.
So it was...
Dude, that's the fucking moneymaker right there. Rights to music. I mean,
that's going to be the death of
so many. Yeah,
everything.
That Bugs Bunny 80th anniversary. The music on that DVD menu. Really, you're telling me Warner's can't get the rights to "Merrily We Roll Along"? This is a dark day.
I don't even know if it's rights or not. It just might just be being goddamn lazy. I mean, that was the story for years, is that Warner's didn't have rights to the Merry-Go-Round Broke Down. That's why in all the 90s productions it's "Merrily We Roll Along."
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's why on a lot of new transfers they might have blurred it out with a different era or something. But yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize with copyright law. It's not just Disney, it's the music industry too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen again. It smells like there won't be more extension. I mean, because we're getting closer and closer to when 1928's in the public domain, folks, and I don't see any indication of it getting extended. But it was Disney and a combination of the music industry, because Gershwin music was still making money in the 90s, and by this point I don't think anyone knows who he is. So
do you think though that, I mean, not to be a Tom and Jerry music soundtrack apologist, but would this level of sophistication for the music, would it really have worked for the movie?
Not for this movie. No, it's a piece of shit. It wouldn't deserve it.
But yeah, but for the shorts, yeah,
But it's such an integral part of it. I mean,
these new shorts, they were done by the guys that are doing the Looney Tunes cartoons ones, right? And those are definitely talented people for sure, but tonally it may not be right.
Right. Yep. It's I think they even put a couple of the Tom Screams in there, the classic ones.
Yeah.
I don't remember offhand. And I thought the sushi one they did was actually genuinely. I thought it was good. I did not think it was a bad attempt at all. The other one with the cat house was kind of pedestrian, but it's. I mean, I see people are trying. They're trying. I mean, this isn't like this movie is, where I don't know. It's like
it's trying to make its money.
Right.
But it's just not willing to pay for quality.
No.
But then again, it is kind of a moot point in a lot of ways if what I said is true about you're not ever going to get a Tom and Jerry movie. I mean, remember the Three Stooges movie they made back in 2013 or 12 or whatever it was? They realized the problem there is like, again, well, we can't make it about them unless something changes. So they made up all this stuff about them being in the orphanage and them moving, and there's all this stuff about, Mo and them going away and coming back. And there's a sibling rivalry there. Like Bob was saying about Tom and Jerry, that was never present in the original shorts. They didn't hate each other for sure, but there was no like, oh, come on, man. They were just not, come on, you fucking. I mean, It was always that. So it's kind of, it's kind of doomed from the get-go. It's not going to ever be good, even if the best of the best ever happens. You can do a Roger Rabbit.
Hang on 1 second. I'll be right back to finish this. Sorry.
Okay.
If you're hearing these words, it's because Trevor is still lacing his corset.
Don't laugh. I'll bet plenty of you men wear one of these.
WLTC. Looney Tunes Critic Radio.
My apologies.
But yeah, there's a certain I don't know, it's kind of doomed. It's kind of doomed from the get-go, isn't it? In terms of the idea.
These are all doomed from the get-go because they never actually want to hire the people that should be doing it.
Is that true, or is it true that even if the best of the best and everybody was left alone, it would still not be a good thing if it was a Tom? Because I don't know that you can do it. I don't know that you can actually do a Tom and Jerry movie where there are actual stakes and things happen. Other than those, that's what I was saying to Pez as I was about those race movies. It's like Spike understood, I believe, that by having them, having it be a race, taking the old Hanna-Barbera race formula, great races or whatever, there's stakes for the characters, and yet you can still find a way to play off of their personalities and hang gags, and you can sustain an hour to an hour and a half on that, and it works because there's an actual narrative. But if you want that to actually, so if the question is, are we going to do a Tom and Jerry movie where we sustain the audience's attention with Tom and Jerry and friends for an hour and a half, or are we going to make a movie where a Tom and Jerry movie? Well, then if it's going to be that, if it's the latter, then you're doomed to fail because they're going to be the titular. It's going to be another example of a titular character that is not the main character in their own movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's just a shame. But at the same time, it's like, well, what was anyone expecting with this? Everyone knew it was going to be shit, and they delivered. So,
and Rotten Tomatoes agrees. I've been keeping an eye on that.
Right?
They're not being very nice to it either.
No, I don't think you can be nice to it, other than I took my child to see it, and I didn't get arrested for child abuse.
All right, so let's end on a high note. Let's try and be positive. Let's think of what is a classic animation franchise that you could successfully reboot and give the live action animation treatment to?
Oh, Jesus Christ! We got to go that. Who deserves that?
Well, I'm saying I would imagine there's only a select few that could actually be done.
I would do it to the Disney characters because they deserve it, but I don't know who. But that's just for his punishment.
I like the
they should do it with the Disney characters. Leave Woody Woodpecker and Tom and Jerry and Bugs and Daffy alone. Let's do it to Mickey Mouse because Mickey sucks.
Yeah, that was the one thing I loved the most about. I mean, I loved the new Mickey shorts. A lot of people, some people did, and some people did, but they at least gave Mickey a personality for the first time in his life. He's finally had a personality. He was a nothing character for decades. So
Oh, it was just the corporate mascot. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the figurehead.
yeah, I'm not too. I was unfairly harsh to those for a while because I'd only seen the early ones where the rigs were really bad,
They were pretty bad in the early days. Yeah.
and then I saw a couple of the gals and guys who worked on them sharing the animatics and stuff. I was like, okay, I still don't. This still really isn't for me, but I don't think it's repulsive like I thought I did. So
Yeah.
no, you're doing fine.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like when you see Laugh Riot for the first time, and you're like,
Right.
you can nitpick and crap on Looney Tunes show, but when you see that Laugh Riot footage, you're like, wow, that could have actually been something if it had been.
Right.
It's the age old, presentation art, curse. It's
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
presentation art or whatever it is that sells the execs or whatever is always going to be a million times better than anything that comes out.
Yeah, who knows what this looked like at an early stage? I don't think it was anything other than Tom and Jerry clutching a bag of cash. I don't know.
Let's think. What would be another? How about because I think the most obvious one they already tried, which was the Flintstones, but
Oh yeah.
they could have done an interesting thing where it's like they had the live actors be the Flintstones, and then the animated characters would be all the dinosaurs and shit that they ride, and the pterodactyls and the cars and everything. They could have done something
Right.
with that, Let's go. Yeah, but yeah, you said let's think about Disney. So
Yeah, we'll do it to Mickey because
Okay.
let's see who else.
I was a fan. I was a fan of Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. That was a good fleshing out of two otherwise stale characters.
Right.
You take two stale characters from the archives and you say, all right, one of them is Indiana Jones, the other is Magnum PI. Go. I'm like,
Right,
fuck
exactly.
yeah. Let's at least try.
Right. Who would be? I'm not trying to think. Who would deserve it? I don't know because it's going to be terrible. But so someone should get a chance at.
You know what? When you say deserve it, do you remember Willard? Do you remember that movie
Yeah.
with? Okay,
Yeah.
It came out. Yeah, Crispin Glover did it a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's a remake. That's a remake. And Willard was not the best movie,
Right.
and the sequel was not the best. But that was the thing that like set Michael Jackson into being a solo artist, is because he did that song "Ben the Two of Us" and all that stuff. So, but. That's a movie that deserves it in my mind because it wasn't that great. They made a better version of it. You should reboot and remake and do stuff like that that people know that needed a better version.
Well, that's what they did with the Maltese Falcon. I mean, that's the best remake of all time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that was a remake.
Maltese Falcon is a remake of a movie, a very poor one.
Wow. I didn't know that. Kudos, kudos. So,
But
when was the original made?
32, 33, 31. I don't remember offhand.
And it was at the same studio?
Yep, Warner's.
Wow.
But I'm trying to think who character would deserve it. I mean, Popeye doesn't. Popeye's through enough abuse, but I'm kind of thinking I'm thinking it's going to be Popeye's turn coming up.
You got Gendy doing that. That has a shot.
Well, I'm talking about live action animation.
Okay,
I'm just
so yeah.
about who would be up for it. I'm trying to think.
What about Betty Boop?
No, it's both are from King Features, so they're cheap enough to do one of these. So,
she's begging to have like a woke version made of her,
I think she's the most woke character ever. All the cartoons with her the best ones are about preventing rape.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Every character is like trying to rape her.
Yeah, that's
cartoons.
and well, that's what and
it's also
Popeye's all about preventing the rape of olive oil from Pluto. So
that's true.
These were the most woke cartoons. They don't need to be re-woke.
But I'll tell you that
they are woke.
You know what's actually was weird is it was demeaning. The people said it was demeaning, but like to me, I don't know. I'm a white fucking heterosexual male, but the fact of the matter is, I always thought it was kind of more demeaning when they made her a housewife.
Oh, yeah.
Really? Wait, so you think it's demeaning that she's in the club being her own person. So,
and she held her own all the time.
Exactly.
So this is perfect. She's the perfect character to reawaken.
But no. She has to be. No. That's demeaning. But we have to put her in a fucking, in the housewife garb and serving some fucking, dude his pancakes in the morning. It's like, no.
Well, that's how the movie could start, and then she becomes her old pre-code self.
Oh wow! See, we're doing it right now.
See, yeah, give me the cheer. Give me 1 dozen roses.
We could give me 1 dozen roses. Yeah, that would. I think Betty would be good. Betty's a good choice.
Betty would be good, and you could have Lena Dunham write it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's who'd get it.
For sure.
You know it's true.
Yeah. She would definitely
rather than anyone with actual talent.
And if there was a script, once she got it, she would consider herself to be the Edward Norton of her universe, and she'd be like, "No, I'll just rewrite it."
Right.
It's like, we need fresh eyes, that industry term. We need some fresh eyes on the script. Well, Thad, I think we've said it all. I think we said it best. Of course, I think we said it best because I'm fucking biased. Yeah. But I think a lot of things needed to be said about this movie, and at the very least, people will listen because it's me.
Look, the bottom line is it's not going to exceed or go below your expectations. It is the piece of shit you think it is, and
that's what I'd like to hear from people. I would like to know if people actually expected this to be good, because I honestly don't think anyone did. You're right. Yeah. I think you're right about that. All right, man. That's going to do it for this episode of Acme Acres. Maybe it'll be the only one. Maybe more. Who knows? You must subscribe to Ferris Wheelhouse, and also check out Cartoon Logic. Where can they get Cartoon Logic?
Cartoon Logic can be found on any streaming device. You can go to cartoonlogic.libsyn.com. That's the official free feed, and we also have a Patreon where we do our monthly Spinach Scrutiny podcast, where Bob Jakes and I dissect the Popeye cartoons year by year. We're at the end of the Fleischer era, and we're just going to go in a little bit to Famous, because I don't think anyone can watch those one by one after a certain point. I mean, we're getting sick. We're getting sick of the Fleischer ones, and that's what the point we make in our podcast is that all the sins of Famous Studios, Popeye, they were there well before that namesake. So, go over there and listen. Help Bob and I buy cat food. I mean, that's what we use our Patreon money for. But and
are you still are you still doing What About Thad, the blog?
Oh, holy shit! No, thank you. It's still there for posterity's sake, but
if you're nostalgic.
Can
I ask you this? So that's that was a show in Canada, right? What About Thad?
It was an early educational film from the 60s and 70s that someone made me aware of, and I decided to use that as the namesake. It's about a troubled boy who breaks a wall and runs away from home, and that's how it ends. And indeed you are a troubled boy. Yes, a troubled soul. I know. Well, I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah.
Tom and Jerry movie, piece of shit. I mean, you can find the really good Tom and Jerry's. There's at least all the ones that are uncanceled up on HBO Max. I just looked at the movie on HBO Max, and it looks like they singled out scenes. It's like, well, who decided which scenes were the best in this thing?
Oh, did you see the promotional stuff that they have for it? It's the stuff of nightmares. It's it's the worst version of the live action actors talking about their animated co-stars as though they're real people just playing themselves in a movie.
Oh, you told me about that. I'm not watching that.
It just to quote George Carlin, it just makes you want to puke in your soup. Right. It's and again, I told you I love Chloe. I love all the actors in this movie that I've seen before.
Right.
And I'm just looking at him like, what are you doing? Why would you just, like, I always wondered that, like, why wouldn't you just say no? I'm not doing it.
These are the films that make them realize they need a new agent.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just like with Back in Action probably got a lot of people getting new agents themselves.
Yeah, Back in Action did not do for Scientology what Jenna Elfman hoped it would.
Listen, you could do another podcast or episode about how that made the Looney Tunes franchise radioactive to this day. So
you know what? That's going to be the next episode you and I are going to do of Acme Acres.
Oh, well, I actually like parts of Back in Action, so that might be a better pleasure.
I do too. Yeah, I don't hate it at all.
I don't hate it. It's a bad movie.
I agree. Yeah, but I love it.
It did not deserve the fate it had.
Correct.
Let's put it that way. Listen, if Space Jam gets to make all these millions and still be a revered classic, how? Looney Tunes Back in Action should at least get. It's like, okay, well, that was a step up. It still sucks, but they tried.
The weird thing for me, it's weird, is that like, it's kind of the same thing where like for me anyway, I'm a fan of these two different things, where like with these two different entities, where it's like I'm talking about the wonderful, the great and powerful Oz and Looney Tunes Back in Action, because I love the Wizard of Oz. And I love Sam Raimi. And I love Looney Tunes. We all know I love Looney Tunes. And I fucking love Joe Dante. But still, these two examples, these two movies, I'm not satisfied on either end. As a Sam Raimi movie, as a Joe Dante movie, as a Looney Tunes movie, as a Wizard of Oz movie. Ugh. It's not great. I mean, the Oz one is a lot worse than Back in Action, though.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you a great... Greg Ford and I were talking about Dante's films the other day on the phone, and I found out we both love the same exact movie is our favorite Dante movie. Have you ever seen Matinee? John Goodman in Matinee?
Vaguely, I remember it.
Dude, it's the shit. Okay, so we'll close on that. Everybody go see Matinee.
Yeah, much better time spent. I mean, if it's got John Goodman in it, it's already above this. You know what was funny? Also, speaking of John Goodman, look up John Goodman hosting the Tom and Jerry 50th birthday special on Boomerang. It's there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's from the old ancient tape, old ancient recorder master. It's up all there in its glory.
When did he host it? What was it for?
1990 for the 50th birthday. It was on PBS.
Oh, where can I find that?
It's on Boomerang. It's on the Boomerang streaming app.
Oh, well, then I got it, dude. We're going to put that in here, too. We're going to show. All right, dude. Yeah, thanks for doing this.
All right. Okay, great.
Cheers.
Whoa, the old clock on the wall tells me it's time for our first guest. Tom, Jerry, our first guest tonight is a major star and one of your favorite canine pals. Put your paws together and give a warm welcome to Spike the Bulldog.
And that is all.
WLPC, Looney Tunes Critic Radio.
This concludes our broadcast day.